VC. Hello everyone. MoFi, mobile fidelity. Who hasn't heard about the controversy, more than just controversies actually, surrounding that label of late? For those who don't know, mobile fidelity is a label that specializes in making special high-end editions of records previously published elsewhere. So they buy the rights for one or several several time pressings of basically they buy the rights to the big labels often to do that many records that many times with their own mastering, cutting, pressing. And it's supposed to be very, very good, and they make you pay a very, very good price for it. Very, very good for them. But it's all fine. It turned out to be not that fine. But yeah, I managed to become entangled somewhat a little bit in that whole thing because I pressed records, so I know a little bit about it, and there were things that were obvious to me that aren't obvious to everyone. But yeah, so mobile fidelity still exists, it's still gonna be in business unless people really don't want to hear anything from them anymore. I mean, the records they pressed were the issue was that some of these at least were not what they advertised they were. Does that mean they are bad records? You are to judge for that. Basically, they advertised the records as sourced from the original master tape, which can mean well, the thing is that some weren't, and now some people call these digital vinyls, which makes no sense. Sorry for those who believe that. A vinyl record, even if it's sourced from a digital file, you still do a mastering specific for the vinyl format. So be it a good sounding record or not, that's besides the point. There is no such thing as a vinyl CD or a digital CD. I know it's fun to say that, and yeah, you're very happy with yourself with your pun or whatever, and I understand that. But yeah, it's a little more complicated than that. That being said, MoFi, for all their shortcomings, are still a label that pretends to do high-end pressings. So I'm gonna show you my top 5 records that MoFi is never gonna do. We start with what is playing in the background. One of my favorite bands. One of the few bands I have almost everything from. And I bought the records when they came out on CD during the 90s, and even some in the 2000s. Now, thankfully, every record of theirs that had been issued on CD only has been reissued on vinyl. This is Zoviet France, a British collective of sound artists that started in the early 80s and that still exists to this day. The lineup has changed a lot, which in this case has played to the advantage of the band, since the band has managed to reinvent themselves in relevant ways rather than stay obsessed with the same old obsessions of theirs from the start, which were great, but at one point they kind of exhausted that potential. This is Gris by Zoviet France on sandpaper cover, so which is why the record sounds a little bit grungy. But there is a few like inserts, OBs and all that, but this is an original sandpaper, hand painted, hand sprayed. They reissued it as well. I got a reissue of that as well. I got it because it has 2 additional extra tracks from the same sessions that are actually really good. if they wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have gotten it. There are a few records of theirs like that, the reissues I didn't get because I didn't need it. But this is like tribal, ethnographic, industrial, ambient, sound collage, and they're good, they're great at it. And this record is really good actually, and they are true sound artists. I know maybe you haven't heard of about that until now, but it is a thing. What are sound artists? Some might say Brian Eno is a sound artist. He sure said it himself when it was appropriate. Well, these guys only do that kind of stuff, so there's no other real way to describe them. I mean, of course they are, but they're just great. And I guess the fact that the sandpaper quality of the record plays a role in the experience. So it's kind of a, yeah, there's a philosophical idea behind the concept of that specific records of Zoviet France. Not all their records are like that, but they have a few high-end concepts with the packaging, how it affects the inners, the record. So this, I guess, MoFi, should they go on and be successful again, I don't expect MoFi to reissue that anytime soon. Something else. The leader of Dinosaur Jr. and he was good, so he went his way, released a bunch of records that are really good lo-fi rock, indie rock. Yeah, I believe indie rock is he did they did a song called Indie Rock something, or Indie Rock Girl. Basically this is lo-fi indie with some collage, some fun. It's not taking itself too seriously. But what makes this stand apart is that Lou Barlow is a great songwriter. He's great at melodies, and his songs are good. I'm a sad man. I can't ignore what life could hold for me. I'll probably have to have sex with a lot of girls before my soul reveals herself to me. Your sweet diversion as I stomp my darker way. Don't let your heart get out of hand, I'll step on it someday. Maybe it's too sad to mention, maybe I am gay. A moment or two may shine, I'm sure to quickly fade away. Ooh, it's a sad life. Very simple music, but it's also music that doesn't need to be complicated. Maybe it's a case of you had to be there when it was happening to understand it, to get it. I believe it's all more than that. Yeah, MoFi is not gonna reissue that. I mean, some Dinosaur Jr. records got reissued by Rhino, I believe, so who knows? You never know, but that's my my guess. What else? Pretty cool looking record now.
3 plus 1 is 4.
I know. Picture disc. Yeah. I bought this when it came out. This is Thomas Könner, another sound artist from Berlin. A great techno producer under the name Porter Rix, who got his start with the Hardwax crew, with the Chain Reaction label. But he, at the same time, he had all these sound art records coming out under his own name. He's part of the art scene also. He did soundtracks for movies, in art exhibitions, like performances. And his discography is, his music has this mineral quality. Like a lot of his sounds, I wouldn't say they necessarily come from nature itself, but you feel the strength of the elements of fire, air, water, stone. It's very physical. This has elements that more than just evoke the brittle of ice, trampling into snow. And the record is a little bit noisy. When I got it, I was like, was it brand new or is it secondhand? Took me a while to realize. I think I had to wait for someone on Discogs to explain the concept, because I found the record in the wild. I mean, I got many records of his, Thomas Könner, and they all sound fantastic. Like really good sound design, really good pressings. These are the early ones on Type Records, originally on CD but reissued on vinyl there. This is an amazing record, La Barca. Ciento de las Nieves, also amazing ambient, and just so many, and more. Actually, there are a few of his I don't like, so I don't have them, but it's not just about being a fan of his. But this, when I read on Discogs that, okay, they actually intentionally scratched the records. I'm not sure it's true. I think someone wrote that, but because my record looks quite clean, I think he just added like not just the static, but the crackling. Is it crackling or is it sounds that evoke us crackling? I don't know, but like imagine you don't know about the record and the concept, and MoFi reissues that and you get these crackling sounds. No, it defies the purpose of what they are supposed to be about. So even if Thomas Könner is one of the greatest current sound designers, especially for crispness of sound, his music sometimes is not for MoFi. So what else? Let's go a little further back in history. Minimal synth or punk, electronic punk from the late 70s, early 80s. John Bender. This is quasi idiot savant music. There's an almost autistic quality to the music. Forgive the word. I mean that when I listen to that music, there is a feeling of the outside doesn't exist. I created my own rules, musical ones, aesthetic ones, and this is the only word that exists for me. John Bender, with his brother, did a few albums quite ignored back then in the early 80s. So this is, I don't remember now. The most famous is Pop Surgery. Amazing album, really, really catchy. But I think the second album, Plaster Falling. The packaging of this It's basically a cover coated with plaster. This is the most sealed record I ever bought. When I got this, I've managed to find in an auction a steel sealed record. How do I know it was steel sealed? Because where you open the record, there was plaster there. The plaster coating. You had to draw a string to shred the plaster to get the record. And I read that some of the concept was actually to embalm the record or something. So it's not a hi-fi sounding record, even the music, of course, but there's this whole philosophy behind this, that this was protected, sure, that by the most rough material possible, which also goes very much against the idea of high fidelity or whatever. But I really love this. And we're gonna finish this with a record from a major artist, a major name I would say in mainstream music, or maybe not exactly, but quite. It's the best album from Beck, One Foot in the Grave. This is I believe, his second album. I mean, he has a few albums that are not really albums, but cassettes. This came out on K Records, one of the great 90s indie labels from the US, early 90s. This is Beck basically doing folk music, country music, to guitar with his friend. This got reissued a few years ago as a double LP, with a whole LP of unreleased songs from the same session. Believe it or not, this is the one to have, because none of the bonus tracks are as good as the ones that ended up on the record. It's just almost a perfect record for what it is. Lo-fi pop, verging on the folk country side of things. Lo-fi recording. Probably recorded on a 4-track recorder. Sure, if you have the master tape, which is probably just a cassette, you might be able to make it sound slightly better. But again, that would defy the purpose, because part of the charm of this is the general sound aesthetic of it, that is actually appealing. Maybe not to you, maybe not to everyone, but there's intention, there's intent behind this. Of course, they did with what they have, it's punk in that sense, but still, the fact that they repeated the process, them and other bands. Yeah, well, there was a scene in the late 80s, early 90s of bands embracing that aesthetic, and some people like that. Me, I also like hi-fi, I also like records that sound amazing. But everything can have different, there's different purposes. Anyways, that was my entry for my own thread. Show me your 5 records that never will get the MoFi treatment. This is a VC thread. And this is the most important take you're gonna get from me on the MoFi debacle. I know I could say a lot of things about it, but I'd rather make it a little fun and and useful. Let's talk about music rather. And I truly like these records, love these records. This is not made to spite or to shit on people who want their audiophile pressings. You can have both, but you can't have it both ways on MoFi. Thank you, see you later.